It is 700 AD. This rugged western peninsula of Britain is home to tribes and warlords. Any idea of Wales as we know it doesn't exist. But over the next centuries, a nation emerges.
This is a story of tribal warfare, of princes and power struggles, and foreign invaders. So how does all that create one country with its own distinct culture and identity?
In this story of Wales, we cover 7 centuries, from the building of a great frontier to Owain Glyndŵr and his bitter struggle for independence. We'll see how battles against invaders bring a flourishing of Welsh culture and the emergence of our first parliament. We'll meet the medieval kings who shaped the destiny of Wales, and discover how a nation emerges from their hunger for power and their lust for land. The struggle for Wales begins here, on the modern border with England.
Britain, in the 8th century, is a patchwork of independent kingdoms, run by warlords, all of them scrambling and jostling for power and for land. Wales doesn't exist, but the land we call Wales today is also a group of kingdoms, and the Britons who live in them are under pressure, under threat from the east, from the Anglo-Saxons.
Anglo-Saxon warriors are busy expanding the kingdom of Mercia. Their settlements encroach on the farmland of the Welsh tribes. In 750 AD, this is Wales. Gwynedd in the north is protected by the impenetrable mountains of Snowdonia. But the lowlands of Powys and southeast Wales are exposed to Mercia. It is the warriors of Powys that retaliate most violently. They mount brutal raids to reclaim what used to be theirs.
They're destroying crops and settlements. The locals are fleeing in terror, and what is left isn't resettled. It just lies empty and barren, because in the middle of the 8th century, this place is full of danger.
The border between the Welsh tribes and Mercia is no man's land.
The situation is out of control. It is so bad that the King of Mercia decides to take drastic action. He commissions the biggest engineering project of the age, and this is it. He decides to build a massive defensive wall to keep those troublesome neighbours under control.
We know it as Offa's Dyke. An earthwork over 80 miles long, it runs along much of the modern English-Welsh border. Because it was added to over time by other rulers, it now extends from near Wrexham in the north all the way down to Chepstow in the south. It is Britain's longest ancient monument. Nothing of this size was built for 1,000 years until the canals of the 18th century.
It's the sheer scale of this work that's difficult to take in. When you think of the manpower involved, the money involved, and all the effort, it does tell you that King Offa must have been a very determined man. And just think about the equivalent today in the 21st century. A colossal work like this well, you're talking tens of billions of pounds. But the essence of the dyke is its aspect. It faces west, and it gives the Mercians the perfect vantage point to keep an eye on the Welsh.
In the 8th century, Wales has never known a boundary on this scale. The marking out of large territorial borders is a whole new concept.
For the many kingdoms of Wales, Offa's dyke will influence the way they see themselves. There's a psychological impact. And from the early Middle Ages onwards, the people over there, the Mercians, future invaders, well, they're the people beyond the dyke. And on this side, the Welsh see themselves as the people behind the dyke. And I suppose this could give us our first possible notion of Welsh unity.
But who are the people behind the dyke? In 800 AD, Wales is home to fewer than 100,000 souls. This small population shares a common language. They speak Old Welsh and call themselves Cymry, or fellow countrymen. Most families are poor, living with their livestock in isolated farms. There are no stone buildings and no towns. The Cymry are defenceless against the ravages of war, disease, and the whims of their wealthier masters, the warlords or local kings who will shape the future of Wales. They'll do it by betrayal, or bribery, or by the sword. But what do we know about these kings and how they lived? This is Llangors Lake, near the Brecon Beacons in South Wales.
These days, this lake is all about leisure, campsites, and boats for hire. Well, 1100 years ago, this is the heart of a small kingdom, the kingdom of Brycheiniog. This small island here is home to the royal family, and the treasures they leave behind lie hidden until they're discovered just 20 years ago.
What archaeologists find in the 1990s gives us a surprising insight into this early Welsh kingdom. It reveals a royal palace with international connections. The first clues were investigated by Dr. Alan Lane.
The timbers are visible in the water around the island, and people have noticed them for centuries. And when we visited the site initially, it was quite clear that they were artificial. They had been deliberately constructed. And so we realised that what we were looking at was what's called a crannog. That's an artificial island.
Alan and his team discovered that the crannog was built of brushwood and rubble piled up to reach above water level. On top, they found the remains of a medieval settlement. It was once home to the royal family. Reconstructed, this is what it may have looked like. A wooden fortification encloses a village for the king, his family, and the entourage. This is where he administers his kingdom and entertains his guests. But most remarkable is the fact that this is the only crannog ever found in Wales or England.
Now, these are very well known in both Scotland and Ireland, where there are hundreds of examples, but the likelihood is this is an Irish master builder who's been brought in by the local king to construct the site.
By building a crannog, the king is showing off his Irish ancestry and his connections beyond his borders. The crannog is a status symbol. But there's one particular treasure at Llangors that reveals the royal family have links even further afield than Ireland. The archaeologists discovered a fragment of linen embroidered in silk, believed to have been part of the Queen's tunic. It's the design that's intriguing.
This is a reconstruction of part of the pattern, computer enhanced, and the colours obviously are partly speculative. We know they're lions because we can compare them with much clearer examples found in the Eastern Mediterranean and from Persia and Central Asia. This is an extremely fine textile, high-class workmanship, and the decorative pattern, the embroidery is in silk, which has to be imported from the East Mediterranean at closest, and possibly from somewhere on the Silk Route back to China.
We tend to think of this early medieval time as a dark age, when life isn't civilized at all. Well, forget all of that, because what Llangors tells us is that these Welsh aristocrats are sophisticated people. They hire Irish architects. They import luxury goods from the other side of the world. These rulers behind the dike are living in a connected world. That's the important thing. They have power, they have wealth, and let's face it, some rather nice real estate too.
Despite the protection that the lake provides, royal life at Llangors is cut short. Within 20 years of being built, Anglo-Saxons attack and the settlement is destroyed. By 916 AD, this royal palace is no more. The discoveries at Llangors are a tantalizing glimpse into a Welsh kingdom from an almost lost medieval world.
Life in medieval Wales can be very dangerous and brutally short. It's a constant battle for survival. A battle against foreign enemies and an endless round of internal warfare, bitter feuding and broken alliances. The land behind the dike is very fragmented, but it's a very attractive prospect to any determined opportunist.
The first opportunist to emerge from the wild frontiers of early medieval Wales is the King of Gwynedd, Rhodri ap Myrddin. What little we know of him comes from a few sentences written by an Irish scholar. In the 9th century, Rhodri becomes the biggest figure behind the dike, but not without a bit of scheming.
First, his uncle, the ruler of Powys, goes on a pilgrimage to Rome and drops dead on the way.
So, in 855, Rhodri takes Powys for himself.
And then 20 years later, the ruler of Saesallwg, that's the region of Ceredigion, suffers an accidental death by drowning. So what does Rhodri do? He swiftly marries into that family and expands his kingdom once again.
Plotting and playing dirty make him ruler of most of Wales. For the first time, lands from north to south are united under one leader. And this makes Rhodri a new breed of king. He gets a new title. He's known as Rhodri Mawr, Rhodri the Great. All thanks to his military prowess in his dealings with a brutal new enemy. The Vikings. From their base in Dublin